All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. We're talking about the Pittsburgh Steelers because not only did they lose last night in the wild card round to the Houston Texans in really bad fashion, 24-point loss, 30-6. Mike Tomlin just stepped down. 19 years for Mike Tomlin, and it looks like it's going to be the end of Aaron Rodgers. And we're going to talk about it. I'm actually going to I'm going to go through a couple of quarterbacks or probably more head coaches that I think Pittsburgh's going to hire. I've seen Clint Kubiak a lot within Steelers fans. I've also seen Chris Shula's name everywhere with Steelers fans, NFL insiders, all that type of jazz. And I don't usually make these types of videos on Will Upton. And, we mentioned in yesterday's video, I'm going to start, just doing more off the cuff stuff. I don't have any topics, any talking points other than some head coach candidates. And it's 4:00. Bad day here. I don't know why. It's a beautiful Tuesday here in Florida, and there's nothing to be upset about, but it's just one of those days. Maybe the Packers loss is still impacting me. So it's Aaron Rodgers last season. Mike Tomlin officially steps down. I believe it was 7 straight playoff losses and the worst playoff drought ever. I've covered the NFL for a couple of seasons now, and when I first started making Steelers videos, it was the Kenny Pickett era. And what's funny is Kenny Pickett in preseason was actually a beast. But anyways, my point was there was a year, I think it had to have been 2023, where Kenny Pickett and the Steelers' first team offense, they only scored touchdowns in preseason. They had like 5 first-string drives, and they scored all touchdowns. And then last year, obviously, it was Russell Wilson and Justin Fields, and this year was Aaron Rodgers. And oddly enough, the Aaron Rodgers move is the one that got critiqued more than drafting and starting Kenny Pickett, wanting to go with Mason Rudolph as a long-term starting quarterback, and Russell Wilson and Justin Fields. Aaron Rodgers, some way, somehow, was the most hated on any of the quarterbacks since Ben Roethlisberger. But Pittsburgh kind of reminds me of the Mike McCarthy Green Bay Packers, where Mike Tomlin should probably have more Super Bowls. Aaron Rodgers should probably have more Super Bowls. And so since Big Ben retired in Pittsburgh, they've just kind of been stuck. And it was a little similar to the Green Bay Packers ending with Rodgers, was similar to the Steelers ending with Ben Roethlisberger. And so, obviously they're kind of different now. Packers have Jordan Love, and I'm a Packers fan. I'm hoping he is the franchise quarterback, but I'm hoping he can win a Super Bowl. But my point just is, no matter who the quarterback or the head coach is for this Pittsburgh Steelers team, the quarterback's the most important part. And I wanted them to draft Mr. Shedeur Sanders primetime so damn bad last season. But here are their offensive stats. 15th in scoring, 23.4 points per game, 22nd in passing, 26th in rushing, 14th in touchdowns, 15th in yards per play, 25th in turnovers, and not the good kind. Or actually, it is the good kind. They average less than 1 turnover per game. So they were top 10 in turnovers. But Aaron Rodgers was pretty much the whole offense. And, it makes me really sad thinking this might have been Aaron Rodgers last year. In fact, especially now that Tomlin's gone, I would say there's more of a chance that Aaron Rodgers plays for a different team than like outside of retiring, because Aaron Rodgers has said the whole damn year that this is probably his last season. I think it's more likely than not, if he doesn't retire, that he plays for a team like the Minnesota Vikings or some other squad, as opposed to Pittsburgh re-signing him or bringing him back. So you made the playoffs, so they're going to have a draft pick. I'm sure we already know what Pittsburgh's draft pick is, but it's somewhere around 20. And it's been somewhere around 20 for the damn past 7 or so years. And so you're able to get, it's NFL. It's not the NBA. The 23rd pick in the NBA, your NBA draft's not the best once you get into the later rounds. But end of the first round, you're projecting a starter, right? So Pittsburgh's got to figure out their quarterback spot. But what's going to come first is their head coaching position. And I love Mike Tomlin. I really do. But it's just time. It's just time. You can't not win a playoff game in 7 years. It's just not time. So I've got this Athletic article here to my side from Mike DeFabo from actually 30 minutes ago, and he was going through some knee-jerk Pittsburgh Steelers coaching search reactions, Marcus Freeman is who they had at number 1. Am I wearing my Notre Dame hat? I'm wearing a Bears hat, and I'm a Packers fan, and they just completely broke my heart 72 hours ago. But I'm a Notre Dame football fan, and Marcus Freeman to Pittsburgh would really upset me. I would be very proud and happy for Coach Marcus Freeman, but I think he's going to run it back with Notre Dame. Pittsburgh, New York, no matter what some of these jobs look like. Although this, I would argue, is probably the most coveted, as opposed to like New York, Arizona, Las Vegas. I mean, there are so many open head coaching vacancies. I want to say the number is 9 right now. It's also important to keep in mind the last 2 head coaches the Pittsburgh Steelers have hired in the last, 30 plus years have been like 34, 35 years old. And I don't believe either of them have had head coaching experience. Mike Tomlin did not. So I've seen a lot of Steelers fans' opinions being that whoever we hire, I'm paraphrasing for the Steelers fans, is going to not have a head coaching resume. Something to keep in mind, at least in the NFL head coaching resume, probably. Here's the thing. I'm actually just going to run through these names. Marcus Freeman, Brian Flores, Jesse Minter, Clint Kubiak, Arthur Smith, Vance Joseph, Mike McCarthy, Chris Shula, Robert Saleh. Chris Shula and Robert Saleh would be, absolutely huge. Brian Flores is probably a big touted name within the Pittsburgh Steelers fan base and just media world right now. I'm sure a lot of them want to hire Brian Flores. Flores, Shula, and Saleh, off top of my head, Harbaugh as well, would all fit the kind of defensive blueprint Pittsburgh's going for. But it wouldn't shock me. The reason I actually even started this video talking about Clint Kubiak and Chris Shula is because of their age. So I had Shula here. Shula's like 39. Yeah, Chris Shula's 39 years old. Let's see how old Brian Flores is. Kubiak is 38. Flores is 39. Is that what I just said? I'm stupid. Shula's 39. Brian Flores is 44. So kind of linking the whole Steelers have gone a little bit younger head coach. Are they going to change it up in the sense of, are they going to go for an offensive head coach like Clint Kubiak? Or are they going to stay in the defensive pedigree and go with Brian Flores? Or are they going to go maybe a little bit younger and Chris Shula? Although I think 44 and 39 are pretty much close in age. So are they going to stick with that young defensive pedigree, Chris Shula, Brian Flores? Or are they going to go old school defense? Are they going to go Harbaugh? Are they going to go, Mike McCarthy, I think is a really cool guy. But I think the NFL is a young man's game in today's day and age. So my money would probably be, as far as who do they want, I'm going to go Chris Shula and Brian Flores. I think one of those two has a decent chance of being the next head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers. But either way, man, the Pittsburgh Steelers are just kind of caught in this old man's game of defense. And they had an extremely expensive defense this past season. Money's been an issue for Pittsburgh in the sense of they just spend so much gosh darn money on the defensive side of the ball that you can really only do so much on offense. And so you see all these running backs and you see all these tight ends and you see all these random wide receivers. And I don't mean disrespect to like Calvin Austin or Adam Thielen per se, more so Calvin Austin. We know what Thielen is and isn't at this point. He was just on a 1-year flyers, probably about to retire. You've only got kind of room for like one DK Metcalf. You can't have DK Metcalf and George Pickens on the same roster. And even the DK situation, Pittsburgh without DK was horrible. And then Pittsburgh, even with DK, it's like, shouldn't they be maximizing him more? There's just a whole kind of big mess. So I'm curious to see if Pittsburgh's going to just throw it all in. Say, look, we're going a new head coach. We're going a new quarterback. We're going to revamp, retool this roster, defense, offense. We're going to go more athletic. We're going to go for speed. We're going to go for power and explosive and elusive and creative offensive plays and schemes and formations. Or are they going to stick to what they know best and have done best, defense? Although you would argue this year's defense was extremely disappointing. They did one heck of a job against Houston last night, all the way up until like the 45th minute of the football game, because Aaron Rodgers and the damn offense can't score a touchdown, and it's just a ticking time bomb before the game gets out of hand because you only have 2 field goals. but 17th in scoring for their defense, 29th in passing, 13th in rushing, very disappointed in that. 16th touchdowns allowed, 6th in sacks, and 4th in takeaways. So very good with sacks, very good at getting to the quarterback, very good at generating these turnovers, generating these takeaways that we've seen, especially in the last couple of weeks for Pittsburgh's defense. But it's one of these, like, I feel like I'm almost overreacting because at the end of the day, Pittsburgh keeps having these really mediocre offenses and even underperforming defenses, yet they keep going 10-7. They keep making the playoffs. Last night's game was very close up until the tail end, and they're competitive enough. So I'm just wondering if they're gonna throw in the towel, because it doesn't mean you're going full rebuild necessarily. It just means maybe we need a year, maybe we need 2 years of a quick tweak with a new head coach and a new quarterback, and we're gonna keep this defense for the most part together. Maybe we're going to get rid of some bigger contracts, some older injury prone guys. It's an interesting situation. I feel like I'm actually, like I said, maybe I'm being a little bit too dire, because at the end of the day, there's still a ton of talent on the defense. There's some talent on the offense. I know their offensive line gets a really hard time. I feel like they've gotten a bad rep the last 2 seasons, and they have not been good at running the football. 26th in rushing this past season, although I felt like the room wasn't the best. I like Kenneth Gainwell, and I do really like Jaylen Warren. It's just I would kind of compare. Warren reminds me of Charbonnet, where it's like, how great do I feel with either of these two guys being like my go-to running back number one? But Warren had a good season. He's a great player. He's very vital. He's a winning player, does all the little stuff right, makes the effort, but I'm looking for a splash, like a splash young second-round wide receiver, a splash young second-round running back, whatever it is. I want a little bit more jazz and pep within this offense. So I feel like I say it, and Steelers fans, you guys have probably been saying this for so long. Like, hopefully this is the mark right here. Hopefully this is the time. Even when they've tried some of these moves, like Roman Wilson in the 3rd round a couple of years ago, I mean, that's just turned into a complete and utter bust. And I'm still hopeful for Roman Wilson. But at this point, 2 years in, nothing really to show for it. It's just tough. So even when you try and make a 3rd round wide receiver pick, it ends up not panning out. So I'm sure Pittsburgh's going to move really quickly. It would not surprise me if they went super young. I guess that's kind of the point of this video is quarterback. I'm thinking young. Maybe they'll go with a bridge QB, for some reason, Mac and Cheddar Cheese Jones is the guy who comes to my mind. Maybe you go with some sort of bridge QB. You draft a quarterback in the 1st or 2nd round. I would have to take a look at some mock drafts to see who that even is going to be. I don't think they're going to trade up into the top 10. Obviously, they're going to miss out on Fernando Mendoza. They're going to miss out on some of the top QBs. Some people think this is a horrible draft class for quarterbacks. Some people think, you can find your quarterback right now. But I'll end with this. What Jacksonville did was very impressive to me, where they went with a young head coach, Liam Cohen. They went with an offensive guy, Liam Cohen. They went super young, GM, coordinators, head coach, and it worked out. They were super aggressive, and it worked out. The New Orleans Saints, they go for Kellen Moore. They go for a young offensive-minded head coach. They do it. They run with Spencer Rattler for a little bit. He doesn't pan out, but they drafted Tyler Shuck in the early 2nd round. And take a look at the New Orleans Saints. They just finished 6-11, but they've got their quarterback and they've got their head coach. So I don't really care about playoffs, and I don't really care too much about playoff wins and winning the division here for Pittsburgh per se. Obviously, that's always the goal. But at the same time, I want them to take a step back and really, really nail this coaching spot as they've done. Pittsburgh's great with hiring these coaches. They haven't had to do it too much because they do such a good job at it. And then you got to get your offensive coordinator, and then you got to get your quarterback. It's going to be really interesting to see what Pittsburgh does. Do they go with Brian Flores? He gets his hands on this defense, and they decide to go after Kirk Cousins and give it one more year, and they're stuck in another 10-7 situation. I don't really know. I've rambled on for too long. Folks, thank you for watching. Hit that like button, hit that sub button for more. This is on my second channel, and yeah, we did a Packers video yesterday, and I'm trying to do like 15, 20, maybe even 30-minute long videos on various niche or topics with no editing and, casual thumbnails, casual titles, and that type of stuff, because I feel like I don't really have a great community with my subscribers, and we're at like 92,000 over on Will Upton, and people still just don't really know who I am and my opinions and that type of stuff. So let me know if you like this style of content, and thank you for watching, and we'll see you soon. But let me know what you think about the Mike Tomlin list Pittsburgh Steelers down below. Peace.